Here in the Outlaws of Thunder Junction, many villain and scum get as tough as they get. Many are wanted, dead or alive. Many assume that I'm here to take Oko behind bars, but that is not the case. I am here for someone much, much worse. The one they call Man-Eating Millie is here in town, and I'm here to serve her justice. And the only person that can do that job is me, Mr. Pubs. I searched all over town looking for rumors and appearances of Man-Eating Millie. I inquired to Tiny Bones to see her location, but he had no clue. My search continued from day even unto night, until suddenly Rakdos came out of nowhere and started running away from the bordello, and I knew then and there she was. As I walked in, it was almost as if she was expecting me. She then challenged me to a game of EDH. And reluctantly, I accepted, because I heard rumors that she was one of the best there is when it comes to EDH, but I couldn't back down from a fight, and this is how it ended.
I'm going to tap all of my lands and play Craterhoof Behemoth.
And I knew immediately I will be dead. I'm looking for answers in my hand, and I got it. I got a Lightning Bolt, and she only has 3 life left.
I'll cast Lightning Bolt.
And when I thought I had it, the worst just happened.
I will play Fierce Guardianship.
She truly was as tough as they get. I may have not got her this time, but next time I will be ready. Because here in Outlaws of Thunder Junction, only the toughest will survive.
Hey, what's going on YouTube? This is David coming back at you with another video today on Pub Stomp MTG, and in this video I'm going to be focusing on my top 10 commanders from Outlaws of Thunder Junction. I'm absolutely excited for the set and all the cards that are within there. Also, I don't know why, but it feels like every single year they're probably going to do something similar to this, like what they did with March of the Machine, where they included multiple characters from different planes and they put them all in one set. And the same could be said for Outlaws of Thunder Junction, putting a lot of villains in this set, and honestly I'm all for it. I think the Wild Wild West theme is absolutely cool. Of course, me being from Arizona and seeing a lot of this in real life, it's very cool to see this in Magic the Gathering. So if you are new to my top 10s, I usually focus on commanders that are original, how powerful are they, and are they unique? Are they doing something different out of the norm? And also, how is the flavor on this card specifically? So I usually combine all those elements in my grading process. Of course, my grading would be a lot different from yours. But with all that said, let's get right into it. Let's talk about my number 10. And this easily has the best name of the entire set, with Laughing Jasper Flint. I mean, look at his name and look at his art. He's just laughing that he's stealing all your opponent's cards. But with that said, let's read what he does. So for 1 black and a red, legendary creature, Lizard Rogue for a 4/3 body. Creatures you control but don't own are mercenaries in addition to their other types. And at the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top X cards of a target opponent's library, where X is the number of outlaws you control. Until end of turn, you may cast spells from among those cards, and mana of any type can be spent to cast those spells. So when I first read this card, I immediately thought this is going to be an excellent card in your Don Andres the Renegade deck, as it focuses on stealing your opponent's stuff. And of course, pirates are also outlaws too. So Jasper is easily going to be just a great include in your Don Andres the Renegade deck. Besides that point, Jasper by himself is pretty fun. However, maybe not for your opponents. This might be a salt-inducing commander, because a lot of people don't like when their stuff is stolen from them. So that's why I had it at number 10. It's a very fun, flavorful card, stealing your opponent's stuff, because he's an outlaw after all. He's just laughing all the way while stealing your riches. Next up, I do also want to talk about another flavorful option at my number 9 spot. And I'll tell you what, I absolutely adore this new version of Bruce Tarl, because of course he was a herder beforehand, and now he's a roving rancher with all sorts of oxen in his arsenal. Of course, on the left side it looks like he has the Ox of Aganos, and on the right side it looks like he does have Vigor. And I'm not sure, I know there's a specific ox in a different art in the middle that he's riding, but I'm not sure what it is specifically. Besides that point, you're probably wondering what this card is focusing on. Of course, it's focusing on oxen. A lot of people were begging for an oxen commander, and now we have it. But his stats do read for 2 red and a white. It's a 4/3 body. Oxen you control have double strike, and when he does enter the battlefield or attacks, exile the top card of your library. If it's a land card, create a 2/2 white ox creature token. Otherwise, you may cast that until end of your next turn. So this can be pretty powerful. Giving all your oxen double strike can be pretty deadly, especially the more ox you do have on the battlefield. The unfortunate side is we don't have a whole lot of oxen in Magic the Gathering. I mean, we do, but we don't. So I bet the more time that does does go on, this is going to be way more powerful the more Oxen support we do get in the future. But for now, it's not super powerful, but at the end of the day, it makes its own Oxen and gives them double strike. So it still is pretty decent overall. I do have to give it the flavor win, absolutely. But now let's shift the focus to the number 8. This one is pretty powerful for treasure synergy, and that's Olivia, Opulent Outlaw. There's a lot of reasons why I do like this card. It's a great treasure generator. Whenever one or more outlaws you control deal combat damage to a player, create a treasure token, so you can make up to 3 treasure tokens. And if one of your creatures do have first strike or double strike, you can make that much more. Also, you can pay 3 and sacrifice 2 treasure tokens, put 2 1/1 counters on each creature you control, activate only as a sorcery. Plus, she does have flying and lifelink, being a 3/3 body. So of course, she does have decent stats, especially going to a treasure theme. She does generate enough treasure for you to do a lot of different things, and you can use those treasure to pump up your whole entire team. Also, another reason why I do like this commander, if you saw at the beginning of the video, there was Man-Eating Millie. Yeah, that's my wife, and she was a good sport in making a video with me. But there are some similarities with her outfit and Olivia's outfit, and so I just wanted to bring that up specifically. But overall, Olivia, Opulent Outlaw is a pretty good commander. I don't think it's quite up there, but again, making treasure tokens is pretty powerful regardless. So following up with that, on my number 7 spot, I do also want to focus on another Rakdos commander with Rakdos himself, the Muscle. I know a lot of people were complaining that there was another new version of Rakdos. This was like the 5th or 6th iteration of him, but honestly I'm all for it, especially if it's new art like this. Plus, I will say he is extremely powerful, so let's first read what he does. So for 2 double black and a red, he's a 6/5 body for flying and trample. Whenever you sacrifice another creature, exile a card equal to its mana value from the top of target player's library. Until your next end step, you may play those cards, and mana of any type can be spent to cast those spells. Also, sacrifice another creature. Rakdos the Muscle gains indestructible until end of turn. Tap it, activate only each turn. So in a weird way, this is very similar to Jasper Flint in the aspect that you're stealing your opponent's cards. This is all based off of creatures that you do sacrifice on their mana value. Plus, he himself is a sacrifice outlet. Obviously, you're only doing that once each turn, but that's not a big downside. Of course, it can be a downside if somebody goes to remove it, then you give it indestructible, but in the response, somebody else tries to remove it, so there is that, but most likely that's not going to happen. However, he is a 2-card combo with Phyrexian Altar and that Skeleton Mercenary that was in the set. I'm trying to remember the name specifically, but I'll put it up on the screen. And basically what Rakdos can do in that combo is exile all your opponent's libraries. But by himself, outside of the combo, this is extremely powerful. This essentially will give you a lot of card draw depending on how much mana value of creatures you do have on the battlefield. So for me personally, this is probably one of the better Rakdos commanders that you can be playing. Rakdos himself, not Rakdos in general. But now let's take a trip down Route 66 to Yuma, or maybe with Yuma Proud Protector. I'll tell you what, this one is extremely powerful. I did play a game with this, at least on the pre-con level, where this was just taking over the game. But let's first read what Yuma does. So for 5 red, green, and a white legendary creature, Human Ranger, this spell costs 1 less to cast for each land card in your graveyard. When he does enter the battlefield or attacks, you may sacrifice a land. If you do, you draw a card. Whenever a desert card is put into your graveyard from anywhere, create a 4/2 green plant warrior creature token with reach. So let's first stop here and basically digest what this card is really doing. So basically, most of the time, this will only just cost 3 mana, being red, white, and a green. So most of the time, it'll avoid commander attacks depending on how much cards are in your graveyard that are at least lands. Also, he's a card draw outlet in the command zone when he enters the battlefield or attacks. Obviously, you have to sacrifice a land, but that's not a big downside because if you sacrifice a desert, you're going to be making a 4/2 plant warrior creature token. And of course, if you have a lot of different situations where you can play lands from your graveyard to the battlefield, you can just repeat those processes a lot and get overwhelming value. So I don't know about you, but this Magic the Gathering version of the Mandalorian is crazy, absolutely absurd. There's a lot of things going for it, and if you do make the right build, this will be extremely deadly. But now let's move on to my number 5 spot, and this one is pretty clear why I made it my number 5 with Felix 5 Boots, and if you don't get it, I don't know what to tell you. The only gripe I do have with this card though is the fact that he does have 5 boots. Why doesn't he have Kicker 5? That would absolutely be a flavor win. Besides that point, let's read what he does. So for 2 black, green, and a blue legendary creature, Ooze Rogue, love the typing, Menace and Ward 2, does have a 5/4 body. If a creature you control dealing combat damage to a player causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So really, the main reason why this is here is clearly the power level. Having another Panharmonicon effect in a commander with really good colors is extremely good. The nice thing about this card specifically though is the fact that he does have Menace and Ward 2, not just that other ability. If it was just that ability alone, that would have been fine, but having these extra abilities of Menace and Ward 2 is just gravy. It does have a way to protect itself, especially with that Ward 2. People will have to pay 2 more in addition to casting their spell in order to target Felix, and if they can't pay that, then basically that spell gets countered. hammered. I'll be quite honest, I'm kind of tired of Panharmonicon effects, but I do know a lot of people like that, and that's not really a reason for me to not put this on the list because it is powerful still regardless of that. But you know what they say, time is of the essence. Let's focus on my number 4 spot, and this one is going to be Obeka Splitter of Seconds. So I know I said time is of the essence, but not with Obeka because you're going to be playing a really long turn, getting those extra upkeep triggers. So let's read what she does. So for 1 blue, black, and a red, legendary creature, Ogre Warlock, does have menace, and when it deals combat damage to a player, you get that many additional upkeep steps after this phase. So it's a 2/5 body. So of course what you can do is buff it up to get more additional upkeep steps. But at the floor, you are getting about 2 additional upkeeps if you don't buff it up at all. It does have menace, so it does have that evasion to swing away, and if one opponent has 1 creature, they can't block Obeka. So this will absolutely crack open a lot of different cards that usually don't see a lot of play. The downside of this is the fact that, of course, you can't really play cards that have cumulative upkeep, for example. However, I do know a lot of people are absolutely excited for this new version of Obeka. And honestly, it's a pretty sweet commander overall, a very original one focusing on additional upkeep effects. But next up, let's move on to my number 3 spot. This one kind of surprised me, but I absolutely love it. I do plan on building Gonti Canny Inquisitor. This is another one of those that are definitely extremely powerful, and honestly I love the art. That's why it's absolutely up here. This is more of my personal preference. But let's read what he does. So for 2 black, green, and a blue, legendary creature, Aetherborn Rogue. Spells you cast but don't own cost 1 less to cast. Whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, look at the top card of that player's library, then exile it face down. You may play that card for as long as it remains exiled, and mana of any type can be spent to cast that spell. So Gonti is actually a deck that I played previously. I played it as a precon versus that other person that played Yuma. And this is an absolute blast to play. Maybe not for your opponents because of course we're stealing their cards. But to me this makes the game a little bit more interesting is the fact that you don't have a really straightforward game plan. Of course you're trying to go in with evasive creatures so that you can swing in and connect to get card draw from your opponent's library. So again, what's very cool about this commander is not every game is going to be the same because you're going to get a lot of different cards from your opponent, and that's what I do like about it. And so now let's move on to number 2. Of course this town ain't big enough for the 2 of us, and that does include Akul the Unrepentant. And to be real, if I was going into a showdown with Akul, I would 100% die, no question about it. So let's read what this monster does. So for double black and double red, legendary creature, Scorpion Dragon Rogue, it does have flying and trample. Sacrifice 3 other creatures. You may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield, activate only as a sorcery and only once each turn. So the big reason why I like this is of course you're going to be doing a lot of big Timmy plays, but is it really going to be big Timmy plays because you're slamming a big giant Eldrazi down onto the battlefield? Of course you do have to sacrifice 3 other creatures. The way you probably want to build around this is by going a big token strategy. Then later on when you can cast a big creature, you could just sacrifice 3 of those tokens to then just slam an Eldrazi down on the battlefield and possibly win the game, especially if you have a haste enabler there. And I'll be quite honest, the reason why this card grabbed me the most is because of the art. I absolutely love the fact that this is a Scorpion Dragon instead of just a Reptilian Dragon. This is focusing on scorpions, which is a really cool concept, especially in Outlaws of Thunder Junction. So this does warm my heart as a Timmy player, but it does not quite reach number 1 for me. And my number 1 favorite card of the entire set is the Gitrog Ravenous Ride. This one is incredible. I love the flavor and also the power level of this card. This just does everything for me. So let's first read what this monster does. So for 3 black and a green, it's a legendary creature, Frog Horror Mount. You have trample and haste. Whenever you deal combat damage to a player, you may sacrifice a creature that saddled it this turn. If you do, you draw X cards and then put up to X land cards from your hand onto the battlefield tapped, where X is a sacrifice creature's power, and he does have saddle. So first of all, I have to say this is pretty nuts having trample and haste with a 6/5 body, all for 5 mana. But the fact that if you sacrifice a big giant creature on the battlefield, let's just say you sacrifice a Galta Primal Hunger to the Gitrog monster when you do saddle it, you can draw 12 cards and potentially put a lot of lands on the battlefield depending on how much you draw into. Plus the flavor of this card is beautiful because of course this is going to be one last ride for that person that saddles the Gitrog monster because he's going to eat him right after. So in my personal opinion, this is probably one of the best commanders of the entire set. Of course this is all opinion based. You can let me know down below in the comments what your thoughts and opinions are. Also, I will say there's a lot of bias towards frogs in my mind, so of course the Gitrog Ravenous Ride being a frog definitely gave it some brownie points there. But let me know down below in the comments, what is your favorite commander of the entire set? Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. With that out of the way, thank you for stopping by.